That is a fantastic quote.
It's polarized, right?
I am very transparent about the fact that I'm a lazy investor, meaning I want my rentals to work for me. I do not want to work for my rentals. So
Hello, everyone. I am so excited to have this fresh new episode of Vallarta Real to share with you, our loyal viewers. Today, we are chatting with the queen of midterm rentals, Erin Spradlin. She's a real estate expert, an author, and the midterm rental queen you have all seen on her YouTube channel. I am super excited to welcome her. You will gain immensely as a vacation home buyer, a luxury villa operator, a rental property investor. So many tips and insights to share. Let's get started.
hi, Deborah.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Finally making this happen.
I know. It's good to see you.
I know, it's nice to see you too. I want to start by saying that we're super lucky to know each other actually first from a hiking group that we're both part of. And I think these peeps are so amazing. We've made some lovely friends in this group. And then the other thing is that you're mommy to Monday, who I just saw on screen for a second ago, one of our
Yes.
favorite hiking doggies. So we've been on these incredible adventures with and without Monday. I think some intrepid adventures, like taking off up out into the mountains all around Jalisco and the coastline around Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, which is so beautiful, and kind of like got to know each other that way first. And then I think it was through James chatting with him when we went up to that house in San Pancho, I actually realized that we had something else in common. We love real estate. We love helping people launch and manage their properties. And then I hit your YouTube channel and I realized that, you were the midterm rental queen of all things related to real estate. And you really do an amazing job of helping people figure out their rental strategy. So for anyone who hasn't already discovered Erin on YouTube, her channel is just an incredible resource. So take us back
Yeah.
to starting. I guess you started the channel with together, the two of you, and then you've really taken it off, on your own.
Yeah. Thank you for that very kind introduction. It has been very nice getting to know you and some of the other people through that hiking group. And also, I think you and I have had some interesting conversations about being entrepreneurs and, working for ourselves. And that obviously there's some aspect or strain of that that's rampant in Puerto Vallarta because that allows you to work, different places depending on what your career is. But I don't know. I think if you had told me 20 years ago that at some point I would have been a real estate agent, I would have been like, no, much less if you had said you're going to live in Mexico. I think that side of it, I would have been like, that's cool. But I went to school for marketing. I had a marketing job for a long time. And then James kind of got into real estate. He was sort of interested in investing and wanted to switch his career. And so he went to school for it. And then one night, it was Valentine's Day of 2017. We were just having dinner and he said, I think I want to quit my job. And would you support that? And I said, yeah, I think, it's time to go for it, which was wild. I mean, he had only had 3 clients at that time, which wasn't exactly a huge book of business, but I had a lot of faith in him, as I should have. And so he quit. And then a month later, I got mad at my boss. And looking at my career, I thought I have pretty much disliked every boss, and I am the common denominator in that. So I need to start to make some changes for my own life. So a month later, I quit and went into real estate. And so James and I, when you're in real estate, it can be hard to get a book of business. There's a lot of real estate agents, but really only 15% of agents do about 85% of the business.
Great data point.
So James and I, to build up our book of business, ended up really doing a deep dive on short-term rental laws, so furnished rental laws. And at the same period of time, Denver changed their laws so that you can only do it for 30 days or more. So in 2017, James and I were already in the midterm rental market. There's a lot of different names for it. People call it medium terms, midterms, corporate housing, traveling nurse, but we had been doing it since 2017. We kind of had a YouTube channel that we would throw stuff up to here and there. But then, and I will wrap this up in a second, but in 2020, when COVID hit, I was just sitting in the car one day hearing a story about how people were not going to be tethered to their jobs anymore. And I thought, oh my God, this is the next big thing for rentals. It's going to be furnished 30 plus day rentals because people can travel anywhere. So I wrote a book about it. That book didn't sell. And I thought, well, I'll just make some videos to sell the book. And then the book sold. But then as an aside, I ended up getting a channel that I've taken a lot of, I've learned a lot myself. I've really enjoyed educating other people. I've really enjoyed having clients from that. And I'm actually not a real estate agent anymore. I am now just a consultant to investors. But that was sort of a long story, but I have really, really enjoyed the journey. And I would have never thought, it was always my dream to write a book. And I'm very proud of that. But it's interesting where it landed me, which is kind of thinking, well, books are great, but video sometimes is a much more effective way to communicate with people now.
Yes. And your channel has so taken off. Your daily shorts and reels are great sound bites for anybody who's a vacation home buyer, luxury villa operator, rental property investor, who is our sort of core base of followers and clients. So again, if you're not already following Erin's channel, it's got so much good stuff.
Thank you.
So I think you're right, Erin, because I would characterize our client base and our home buyers as multi-unit operators. They, own a rental, a primary residence, maybe one or two vacation properties. Some may or may not be classed full-time as rentals, and own in both Canada and the US as well as Mexico. So I think the most experienced renters fall into that, multi-unit category. So I do think that there's a lot that you offer and share and coach on that's super relevant.
And a lot of them too, right, are seasonal, which I'm sure you know, right? They're snowbirds, so they're doing 6 months here and 6 months in better environments, which actually works very well for that grouping because you can have long-term rents without having to think about it or be involved with it.
That's right. So yeah, let's dig into that. So for you, first of all, why midterm rental? What really ignited your passion about that category versus the others you mentioned, long-term rentals and short-term? What's the sweet spot for you on midterm rentals?
So two things. The first is that I am very transparent about the fact that I'm a lazy investor, meaning I want my rentals to work for me. I do not want to work for my rentals. So I don't want to be a slumlord, but I am not someone that's just so passionate about real estate that it's all I want to do. Those investments serve me to diversify my assets and to help me move toward my retirement and financial goals, but that's all they are. And so with that in mind, a midterm rental gets an elevated price above a long-term unfurnished rental, but it's nowhere near the amount of work as a short-term rental. Short-term rental, meaning Airbnb, a lot of times is how people refer to it. Although Airbnb you can do long-term rentals on as well. But for short-term rentals, they're a ton of work. And so that just never appealed to me. And then second to that, the laws just changed in Denver in 2017, which forced us into that position. Denver was kind of on the front end of the change in those laws, but many, many different cities have adopted that. And subsequently, in a lot of municipalities, you cannot rent for fewer than 30 days unless it is your primary residence. And a lot of times too, people don't like to rent their primary residences. So it kind of knocks out the investing position. But if you already have furniture, then what? Or if you might think, hey, I'm going to go to that property eventually, it's my second home and I want stuff there. Right. So I can't rent it unfurnished. So it aligned with a lot of my goals, but my primary goal being, I don't like to overthink my investments. It is just one income stream. And I found that I liked that little squeeze extra on the rent, and I did not find it to be very hard to do.
Yeah, that's a brilliant explanation and probably, will inspire many of our viewers. So then back us up to how this might apply to resort or vacation markets here in Mexico. If our viewers do have property in Mexico as well as in the US or Canada, how does the strategy of a midterm rental fit or not fit, overlay to this market?
It's interesting because I think, the problem with midterm rentals or any furnished rentals is that the owners always want to use them at the same time when your core tenant base would. But for the example of snowbirds or people that come during our best season, so let's say November to March, it is a good fit for their properties at home because a way that midterm rentals came about, these 30 plus day furnished stays came about, is not just the change in the laws, but also even when Airbnb and even in cities where Airbnb, or I should say short term rentals, so under 30-day rentals are allowed, you see a lot of stagnation during the cold months, during the holidays. So November through March in a lot of areas where they typically get snow, right? So if you have a short term rental in those spaces, you're working, but you're not making a lot of money. So the genesis of midterm rentals in general, in addition, I should say, to the change in laws, is also that people were tired of working so hard and only making this much when you could just install a long-term renter through that down season and make just as much but not do any work. So I think for the people that come down here, it's actually a great idea for them. I coach a lot of people from abroad, or a lot of people that do this type of thing, because they are not going to use that property until they go home. Although, for some of your clientele and some of my clients, there's a little bit of conflict because they may go home for the holidays. But it tends to work that way. You obviously also could do it during high season. You're always, and the pattern for payment or market rates follows the same as it does for short term, meaning some months are worth more to you than others. So right now, Puerto Vallarta is not worth that much, but coming soon, it gets a lot more expensive on a
Yeah,
monthly level because the weather is a lot more tolerable. And same thing with back at home, right? So the
yeah.
winter months really slow down, but then in a lot of places, the summer months pick up. So you do need to adopt a pricing strategy that keeps that in mind, even for these month to month rentals. But for your client base, my client base, it makes a lot of sense to just pick up a little bit of money. And honestly, sometimes too, a nice way to think about it, depending on what your mortgage is that this is a house sitter that is paying me a little bit, right? I don't actually think the numbers are as strong as they used to
Okay.
be 5 years ago,
Yeah.
but you can get great tenants that will manage your place and pay you. And that's a nice place to be.
That's a great way of looking at things. And I think that's absolutely applicable to cold climate off season and hot climate off season. So if you are a property owner in a resort community like Puerto Vallarta, or you own in the islands on the East Coast, even in Florida, our other market, you're experiencing super hot summer months, very humid, lots of afternoon rain showers, not exactly the most appealing to a vacationer. What are some of your tips to spike interest in those low season months and squeeze a little more juice out of it, like you're describing?
Yeah. So this is counter to what I just said, but my number one tip to people is to have pricing flexibility. A lot of people will enter the rental space. They have been trained through years of misguided real estate education, maybe about having to hit certain cap rates or formulas. 80% of your returns in real estate come from appreciation. And once you come to believe that, and I do feel like seasoned investors come to believe that, right? Like, I think a lot of new investors have trouble with that. I think a lot of seasoned investors have no problem with that. But once you start to look at it that way, you become less concerned about cash flow. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't get cash flow, but what I often see is people will put their property up and they say, well, this is what it's supposed to be. And it's like, different markets are worth more and less, different seasons, in different seasons, different properties are worth more and less. And obviously marketing accounts for that, but the market is telling you what the rental is worth, and it's not worth it if you're not getting any hits. So if you go 7 to 10 days and you haven't had any interest, you are priced too high. If you go 48 hours and you've had 3 hits, you're priced too low. But you would be better off taking a renter a little bit low for a month or two and having that renter pay you while you figure out your pricing, versus the opposite, where you're priced too high, no income is coming in, and you're trying to figure out your pricing. You're better off to get some money as you figure out your pricing. And so that is often something I see people make a huge mistake on. The other thing I see is that there's a strategy and there's a difference between, you might not have this because you're in the luxury space, and we see this less in the luxury space, although we still sometimes see this, which is in short-term rentals and often in bigger properties. The thought is heads and beds, which means you maximize the number of people that can sleep in a property. So you'll see really nice properties with bunk beds, and like, I would never rent somewhere with a bunk bed. I just wouldn't. I don't have kids. It's not my lifestyle. It makes me think about IKEA. It is a complete mismatch for why I am there. And so I think when you're thinking about the 30 plus day furnished space, it is not a heads and bed strategy. It is much more day-to-day living and an aesthetic that people are responding to. And so a lot of the people that travel in this space are really location to restaurants, location to outdoor experiences that they want to do, culture. They want things to look nice. They want king beds. They want huge TVs. They want things that signify or signal a little bit of elevated taste.
Yeah, that luxe experience. And that's definitely a key call out for us at Crate Interiors. We leverage that luxury experience by having a very well-built bed, bath, kitchen, tabletop, housewares menu, where there's 3 grades of sheets and towels and pillows and lovely bedding and throws and so forth, because we do feel like that contributes enormously to guest experience and shows up in guest reviews. So time and time again, we get great reviews for our clients on quality of mattress, good night's sleep. We get the calls from the guests asking to buy the mattress, which is, a Western bed strategy or Four Seasons hotel strategy.
Yes.
With the built out housewares that you could purchase online. So yeah, when you are in midterm or any, vacation, the vacation of any length, more than just a few days, it's more about that experience. You settle in, you want a place to put things inside of drawers. You want the amenities in the kitchen. You want the nicer sheets and towels. You're there for a few days. You're going to wash and, wash towels, put them back on, on the hooks. And, it's the tactile piece of that. The experience becomes a lot more important.
It's nice to hear that confirmed, and it makes sense. And it makes sense that your strategy and that people would be responding to, like, I want to buy that. That was a good experience for me, because I think people want to feel like they're treating themselves a little bit. They're on vacation or they're on an extended vacation, and the more that you can reinforce that aspect of it for them, I think the better their vacation or their relaxed time off is. The more it's enforced for them that they're having like a special experience.
That's right. Yeah, this is pure gold, Erin, really. As you're talking, I'm calling out. I may just call them out by name while we're chatting. Clients of ours that have had these kinds of questions or these kinds of comments, and sort of, grappling with the dilemma about their approach.
So the way that I like to tell people to approach their purchases is to think about it as, one, would it make or break someone renting this property? And it's that sort of stuff is going to show up in your marketing, in your photos, the things that you're talking about. The other way to look at it is the absence of this item going to show up in a review? So I think when it comes to the items that are needed, a king bed is needed. A lot of people really want a king bed. I think Even though people do not like to always admit this about themselves, a lot of people love a gigantic TV. So I think a really big TV goes far. Not for everyone, but also I think a TV fills the wall a lot of the time. And there's the really nice high-end Samsung TV too now that will reflect art. It looks, I mean, it's a framed piece essentially, and then you can also make it a TV. So I think that that's an outstanding buy. And then I also think a couch is just a critical part of the couch in the living room because it is such a statement piece and you spend a lot of time on it. So not only does it need to look good, you want it to be captured in the photos, but you also want it to be comfortable. And then when I think about the things that will show up in a review, obviously low quality mattresses will show up. And I think you also see when kitchen items are missing, that shows up a lot. You know, if somebody has just barely done the kitchen, that becomes a problem. I think fans, portable fans, that's a cheap item, but it can solve a lot of problems. It can solve heating problems. It can also solve noise, it can also solve noise pollution issues as well. So those are the items just off the top of my head that I tell people to focus on.
Yeah, that's so brilliant. That's a really great strategy to guide people through that investment. So then pet policies. Love or hate them. You're a pet person, and so am I. But
Yes.
pet policies, I think, is an area that really makes or breaks our clients. It's very polarizing for the owner and the guest.
Yes. And I will tell you all the content I make about pets does extremely poorly because people think that they have an idea they come in and they're like, I cannot be swayed. Like I have feelings about pets and you will not change my mind on it. I think everyone should be pro pets. And I would say specifically with dogs, cats, maybe there's a little bit of a conversation about that. I have been anti-cat for the last couple of years because of a personal bad experience with tenants that snuck in a cat. But as I've given it more time and done more research, supposedly more renters have cats than dogs. So that really should be a thought when you're thinking about what will drive the most traffic. Also, there's still a lot of discrimination against cats. So if you are open to cats, you could open the door to a tenant pool that really needs you. And so in that way, I think allowing for cats might be a very smart strategy in a tight market. But as a general rule, the reason why I am pro allowing pets is that when we started this, I was looking at insurance studies and they were saying landlords that allowed for pets could charge, let's say $30 a month to allow for those pets as like a pet rent. And they always came out ahead because usually at the end of the year, if they had a claim, that claim was never more than $30 worth of claims than for landlords that didn't allow for pets. Yeah. So if you didn't allow for pets, you lost 360 over the year. If you allowed for pets, you came out 320 ahead or 330 ahead because you would pay $30 out more to insurance. I also have found just in studies, like when you look at Airbnb and you're doing filtering strategies, a lot of the time you will see that you will knock out 30 to 50% of your competition in major metros if you just allow for pets. And then finally, I have some friends that used to work for Turbo Tenant and they had done some studies, and what they had found was insurance companies felt that pet owners treated the place better because A, they were so appreciative they could bring in their pets, and B, the way that we treat pets now is very different than the way we treated them 40 years ago. 40 years ago, we would leave a dog in a crate all day, go to work from 8 to 5, come home, we're tired, the dog's tired. It's a bad experience for everyone and the dog acts out. Well, now people work from home, they're with their animals all the time. Their animals in some ways have substituted their children. And so I mean, you've met my dog Monday, but both of my dogs are like, they have a pretty sweet life is what I will say, and they deserve it. But like, these are not ignored creatures. They are around us all the time. They are our top priority. And I think a lot of pet owners feel that way. So thus you don't see damage showing up in the property.
I agree. It's very rare. So I think I'm on both sides of this equation. For anyone that knows me, you know that I travel with a leash-trained Bengal. And so travel for me is a very unique experience. And looking for a pet-friendly hotel mid to high tier class, or a rental property, as I had recently have done in Vegas and Dallas, is so difficult. And as this market changes, and I think more and more people do have pet friendly um, uh, status on their profiles, and platforms like Airbnb actually do have a pet friendly classification. It's more difficult to find than you think. I have been stranded in a city before where I've checked into a hotel that was pet friendly on the website, and then it wasn't when I got to the check-in desk. And I've been literally scrolling through my phone with my, leopard on a leash in the lobby of the hotel, trying to figure out another place to go. And I would say for anyone that does want, to fill this huge void, to list that in more than one place on your description, so it does show up in search. It's much more difficult than you think. In a quick local geo search, finding properties that are built as pet friendly. And the second part of that is, I would say you described the profile perfectly. Pet owners are so careful. They're so grateful that, that your place is pet friendly. You scrub and clean up after your pet and make sure that everything is in perfect condition. I mean, I will literally wash everything and wipe my way to the front door as I leave, extract myself to make sure that things are great. I'm so grateful. And, I have rental properties also, and they are absolutely pet friendly. And I will back up what you just said. I just signed a long-term lease on one of my properties this month, and every applicant I got had pets, and was so grateful that my property was listed on Facebook as pet friendly. And I ended up getting the most lovely new renter with three tiny little dogs, who is just amazing. And I've never once had damage. It's been so easy to vacuum after the prior tenant, make sure that the pet smells are gone for the new pets coming in. No issue, no damage, never once had a bad experience, and nothing compared to the human damage that our clients routinely report
Yes.
on the
Yes.
beautiful properties that we design. Those stories pale in comparison.
Oh my gosh, I could not agree with you enough, Deborah. I feel like because people will ask me all the time about the pet deposit, and I say, you don't need a pet deposit. What you need is a deposit. And yeah, and it doesn't matter if it's the dog or the human, and it's going to be the human. Like, you need to make yourself whole off of that deposit, but don't worry about the pet so much. And I completely agree with you. And I also, it breaks my heart a little bit, and I feel a little bit bad about the discrimination against cat owners, because I do think they really care. They're very cautious. And I think, like a lot of stuff that you hear in real estate, something that bothers me a little bit sometimes is the over negative attitudes towards renters. Like, they're just going to trash your place. And they're just like, all of us have probably been renters at some point, or are still renters, depending on the circumstance. And we don't trash a place. And often your renters look like you. So if you, and I don't mean look like you, but like, they act like you, they respond.
Yes.
Yes, they are kind of like, they potentially would be a coworker that you would like, or a friend that you would know socially, right? And so depending on how you comport yourself, you might also expect that out of the tenant. And so I think just being smart about that. And the reason why I bring that up is because after somebody snuck cats in. They didn't ask if they could have cats. They snuck cats in, and then they both did not treat our property well, but even sadder, they didn't treat those cats very well. And I think, as I've thought about this over time, I think that is an anecdote. It is not a pattern. It is a one-off that just, like, obviously resonated with me and I had a big reaction to, but it is not every pet owner. And the other thing I would just like to add to this is, like, right now, I've been consulting for at least 3 years, and then I've been in the midterm space since 2017. Right now is the hardest time that I have seen hosts have trying to find tenants and renters. And I think that that's because people cannot sell their properties with the speed that they were before. So they're moving into the rental market. We're also having less international travel. There's just a couple of elements around this. So if you were looking for a market advantage, allowing cats would be it. And to your point, Deborah, about like how you advertise that, you should write it in the title of your Airbnb. Cats okay. It should be the first thing that shows up. Do not write cozy bungalow. That does not tell anyone anything.
Yeah.
Cats okay communicates a lot.
Okay. Yeah. So true. That's so true. That is so brilliant and so well said. And that again, that soundbite aligns so well with things we discuss with our clients, because I always point out to new investors that your profile as an owner is likely to influence the profile of renter that you attract. So if you buy, a $500,000 two-bedroom condo on the water, or you buy a two-bedroom villa in a gated community, and you design it and decorate it with your own aesthetic and your own taste and your own interests in art and decor and collectibles, you are very likely to attract that very same profile to your property. And so the care and the consideration that you show in those two examples, and reflect your own personal taste, is going to draw that same kind of family or same kind of renter to you. And that's really the beauty of it, because, and it's sort of like, as they say, a dog whistle. You're attracting the very same person that you would enjoy being around. And I think that's what's so gratifying for home buyers, because they can be reassured. Let's say if they upgrade to custom upholstery, like you're saying, the sofa is so very important in terms of comfort. Or if you upgrade sheets and towels and they're super nice quality and fluffy, and you have great spa robes and slippers, people will see that in the amenities list and they will pinpoint that and be like, this is a place that I would enjoy staying. So the care that you show in your place is going to come back to you in terms of the person that stays in your property and appreciates what you've created.
Exactly. I mean, they're going to be someone that appreciates a lot of the things that you appreciate, right? Because whether they understand it or not, they're having an attraction or a reaction to how you wanted to set up your space and how you thought about that space. And so, I think that it's nice to hear you mirror that as well in your experience and what you've, learned after all these years, because I think it is one of those things where, at least on my end, I hear a lot about like, what about squatters? What about someone trashing my place? And it's not that never happens, right? I don't want to make any false promises that every rental is going to be a joy. I, in fact, am dealing with a tenant right now that I'm quite annoyed by, but I am just annoyed by them, right? That's all it is. And it's just like, you might go to work and your boss would annoy you for a little bit and then you move on, and it resolves itself after a week and it's like back to, and so I think there's this overemphasis sometimes about tenants being problematic that I just haven't found to be in my experience or with any of the investors that I've worked with.
Yeah, it does feel like right now it's kind of like an uncertain time or an uncertain year for real estate. There have been some shifts in the last 5 years if you're following the arc of inventory, sale price escalation, and so forth. It does feel like a somewhat uncertain time or uncertain year for real estate. How would you characterize it, and what kind of data points or advice would you offer home buyers at this moment?
James and I just made a podcast about this that I think is up today, but we did it yesterday, and we were talking about the challenges of speaking to people about real estate right now, because we have a new administration. With that new administration, whether you like this quality or not, it showed up with a lot of chaos. And when there's a lot of chaos, it's hard to make business decisions or to bank on the business environment as it has always been. And so I am conflicted about how to answer that. What I can let me say this. I am not supporting people right now that are buying new properties. I won't work with them on that because I am concerned that the numbers aren't there the way that they used to be. I think it makes more sense for me and for my clients if you already have a property, you inherited a property, you're getting divorced, you want to move on, but you have the money to keep the property, you bought the property 5 years ago when the interest rates were good, then we can work on a lot of stuff and speak to how you would market that property and how you would set yourself up for success. And I do think the other side of that is that the renter class is growing. So we are seeing the United States has 34 million renters, and there's no reason to think that that's going to stop because the down payment continues to be prohibitive. The interest rates are an issue. You see a little institutional investing creeping into the market in the United States, and that also will make it more challenging for people to get in. So in that way, if you own a property, then you should anticipate that you will be able to get renters in. And this actually goes back to a point we were talking about before, which is the biggest way that I see landlords shoot themselves in the foot is that they just think this is the price. And it's like, but that's not the price. You have different competition now than you had in the past. And so no one, and I don't mean to sound callous when I say this, but no one cares what your mortgage is. I'll hear people say, well, I have to get this to break even. And it's like, your end tenant does not care, just as you don't care what something costs Target. You're not like, well, Target is, I feel for Target. It's like, this is the money that I have to spend and this is what I'll do with it. And I also feel that investors, because I hear a lot of questions around this, and I think the way to position this is that you should think about your investment the same way that you think about how you're going to pick your next flight home to Florida, right? You are not picking a flight on your flight to Florida because they're offering a 20% discount. You are picking a flight to Florida because it starts in Puerto Vallarta, it gets to Florida, it's the shortest time, it makes the most sense for your schedule, it is maybe an airline that you like, maybe not, and it's a price point within a range that you find acceptable, and that's what you're booking on. You are not booking based off a discount. You are not booking based off of whether or not they offer Perrier in the flight or not. There are things that people, I think, fairly so, but they get distracted about it because it gives them something to do, or when you're new to it, you don't have a good way of evaluating what matters and what doesn't. And so just think about your rentals as people approaching them the same way that you approach your plane ticket purchases.
With all that said, what's your go high level view of investing in Mexico right now? If it's not so sort of immediate, long-term picture for investing, buying, operating real estate in vacation segments in Mexico?
It's hard to say because they say that when the US sneezes, Mexico catches a cold, right? So that concerns me because I actually do not think the policy in the United States is very good and that it's not very self-serving for the United States. And I worry that that could impact Mexico, right? And I also worry about a lot of people in the US, their attitudes towards Mexico and a resistance to coming to Mexico. And we have been a good and not a good, but we have invested a lot of money in Mexico and that has impacted the Mexico economy. So I worry about that. On the flip side of that, I think the United States has also alienated Canada. So you might see more Canadians that were going to go to Arizona come to Mexico. You also might see some of the other countries that had business opportunities or business relationships with the United States move to Mexico. Right now, Mexico's president, Claudia Sheinbaum, is voted as the most popular politician in the entire world. So people have fond, I think other business leaders, other politicians have fond feelings about this woman. Mexico is enormous. It's diverse. It has a lot of resources. It has a very friendly, quite educated in certain parts of the country citizenry. And we have a lot of opportunity here. I mean, I have never experienced healthcare in the United States the way I have in Mexico. I have never experienced vet care in the United States the way I have in Mexico. Same with dental. So I think that people need to be made aware of these opportunities, and then that shows up. But I'm telling all my friends, like, I would be looking at this very seriously, but it's a big leap for a lot of people. Not everyone has the money to do it. So, I don't know. I have complicated feelings about it, but I personally feel extremely lucky to own a property in Mexico.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Couldn't agree more. And I think that's resoundingly true for our investors and clients. No one looks back once they've made that investment leap, and it starts to impact their quality of life as well as they start to be here more often. As you've stated in terms of amenities and services that are available here. It's interesting because some realtors, have commented recently in my touch bases with them about, the high level of inventory on market, and so what that is going to do to property valuations. But you can benchmark that against, our other market, Orlando, where inventory levels are high as well at the moment. Toronto, which is a feeder market to both here and to Orlando. So we watch that very closely, and realtors are having the same conversations there. So in general, maybe a little bit of a cautiousness or a slowdown in terms of purchasing. But at the same time, so many of our realtor contacts are commenting on how many people are ready to make a move because their country of residence doesn't fit their needs anymore, or offers them, is offering them some kind of concern that they feel that they need an alternative residence, or they need an alternative residency, or an alternative place to be at least part of the year. And so, even now, looking for places to add to their real estate portfolio in Mexico. It's polarized, right? Some people are concerned. And there's the kind of over assortment of real estate on the market on one level, maybe driving down property values. Then there's also people just absolutely not willing to stay where they are and looking for an alternative. And, at any cost, buying something now, even if it's not the perfect thing, to be able to have that other secondary location.
Which is exactly what we did, right? Like, so we wanted options and we were just a little bit ahead of that trend. But I like Mexico. I'm familiar with Mexico. It's Spanish in the United States. You've had some exposure to it, right? And we also, a lot of us have already taken vacations. So it's a very soft landing. I find it curious, the enthusiasm or the demand that Spain is getting right now. And no shade to Spain. I have not been, but I have heard fantastic things. But I think Guanajuato looks a lot like Spain. And like, there's just Mexico.
It was made by the same hands. Let us not.
Yes, exactly. Like, I don't want to say that, like, not that Mexicans don't realize, I just don't want to offend anyone, but exactly. It's like, there's some very similar backgrounds between the two countries. And I think, Mexico, for us at least, it's a 3-hour direct flight. It is currently, when I do business, it's in the same time zone as, my clients are nationwide and in Canada. So it's not the same as, it's not like all of my clients were in Colorado, but I'm on a Colorado time zone right now. So sometimes when we see this for people that have maybe lost interest in leaving the United States and are starting to explore options for leaving, I am always surprised that Spain is so in demand and that Mexico is not on the top of the list, because Mexico is very close and a country.
Price. Right.
Yes, lovely people, great food, beautiful geography. And it also, in my experience, I think this was a big concern for both of us, is will it be easy to meet people? And it has been very easy to meet people. And so I would recommend it to anyone, but it is hard to see which way things are going. But I would say, I think Mexico potentially is positioned for a ton of opportunity.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Glad we're here. So I want people to understand what you offer in terms of your white glove service. So you offer this incredible consulting support. People can hit your channel and get, great information. But then you also have a white glove concierge service or consulting service that you can offer investors and home buyers. And then there is the hold my hand, done for you service, which I think is so valuable for someone jumping into the market for the first time. So describe that a little bit and share with our viewers what you can offer and how you can help them.
Sure. Thank you. The Mentor Hold My Hand package came out of something where I felt it was a service I really could have benefited from when I first started. And also when I was a real estate agent, I would hold people's hand through the investment and then have some like basic level tips about how you get started. But I think there's the purchasing of the property and then also the nerves about like, is my bank account going to be set up? Am I going to get quality tenants? Because of the amount of money involved, I think that there's a concern too that you're going to embarrass yourself or financially wreck yourself. And so people worry or there's a little bit of reservation around that. So my service, the Hold My Hand package, is I will set you up on the three biggest platforms. And I have a master's in marketing. So I bring like the marketing side to the property. And this way it still makes me feel kind of good about AI because AI is just reflecting what everybody else is doing. And that's not necessarily what you want to do, right? So I will set you up on the three platforms. I will work with you and coach you through your lease. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but I have done a ton of leases, so I can talk about the clauses that typically change state to state, or talk to you about how you're going to research them and evaluate the rules around what would happen if there was an eviction situation, which I have never run into, but I think it's always good to know, right? And then I help people do leases. I help them get set up on Airbnb as well if they want that aspect. And it primarily has been for furnished rentals, but I am now expanding my services. I've come out of the furnished rental space for 30 plus day rentals, but I am now expanding my services to any landlords. So whether it's furnished or not. So that typically tends to be my base of clients, is that they're either brand new to renting properties or they're brand new to this furnished side and they're not sure how to find tenants, how to speak to them, how their needs and wants are different for this in between stay versus a long-term unfurnished or a short-term. And so that's my big custom package. And then my other packages are just more one-to-ones. If you're trying to evaluate, like you have a list of questions or you're new to it and you just have some high-level questions, you may not know yet if you should buy, if you should do it, and want some coaching, and then thinking about the later package, if that makes sense. So I try to do a range. It is important to me that people, regardless of where they're at, have some access to the education. And so depending on how much access you want and how much availability you have, then you can hire me to do it all for you and I'll coach you on that, or hand it off to your property manager. Or if you just have some questions, or if you want to read a book on it, I've written books on it, or the YouTube channel, etc. So, but right now, the majority of my clients are those hold my hand clients that want to come in and have someone else just handle it, tell them what they need to know, and basically landlording on the fast track.
That's so great. Yeah. I think there are a lot of questions for buyers and investors who might be new to vacation rental or more typically a short-term rental strategy, because I think in a lot of coastal, resort and vacation markets, the classification may be a little more short-term. It could be a week rental, could be, maybe a 2-week rental, depending on the size or the style of the home, and trying to figure out, how to optimize that listing, what rates should they be charging, what rates should they be accepting from their property management on overall fees, or even individual, broken down cleaning fees or maintenance costs. We hear those questions a lot, and clients come to us to validate or back up into the costs that they're seeing on their property management, monthly retainers, and just looking for some guidance or looking for some benchmark numbers to make sure that they're in the right place.
And I have sort of a relevant story to that. Maybe like a month ago, James and I were just going to do a little staycation. We wanted a property that was right on the beach, right? And so there's a property here called Harbor 171. It has a ton of units that, I mean, I think they're all beach facing, right? But if you go on to Airbnb, there's a ton of Harbor 171 units, right? But some of them will lead with, 4 photos of the kitchen. And this is something you see in the midterm space. Open all the drawers and show them that there are forks, which first of all, I think is bad advice, because when I see those photos, I just think about my husband not shutting drawers and being like, James, shut the drawers. Yeah. But also, yeah, but also more important, it's like I am not renting the place on the forks. I am renting the place because of the massive Pacific Ocean that is right there. So don't ever make me search for it, right? Like, don't, like, that's always your lead photo is what matters the most. And I think as someone searching as a tenant, that's a real opportunity when you see the forks drawer, because you know that that person is not necessarily getting a ton of traffic. But as the host, when you're thinking from a marketing side, you really want to be showcasing the most important things. And even a less obvious example of that is sometimes people will lead with their main photo of the bedroom. And I can kind of, I guess, understand that, but it's not a strong shot by any means, and it's not what you would lead with.
Yeah, that could be a very happy place overall on your staycation. But it is not the lead photo yet still.
Totally. It's like, we hope you have fun there. We hope that works out. But that has,
great.
You could do that anywhere.
Very happy memories, but it is the terrace and the ocean views at the end of the day. Yeah, that is so true. And I mean, it's amusing to us because, I think you can search the internet and find plenty of whatnots to do's, but it's not always intuitive to a first-time home buyer or investor. And I think as one of my favorite mentors, Alex Hormozy, likes to say, you pay down the ignorance tax as quickly as you can by using an expert to guide you through the process so that you don't waste all your time and your resources making the errors, that you get to profit margin as quickly as you can. You get to go live with your listing as quickly as possible, and you start earning revenue and monetizing your investment as soon as possible.
That is a fantastic quote. And I got to say, I love him too. And I don't know if it's just because I've entered the space in the last couple of years so that I'm discovering him, or if he's doing something, but everybody is talking about Alex Hormozy. And I think it's because he gives very solid advice like that, where it's like, yes, I will pay down that tax to make me an expert as quickly, and I will save a ton of money on the back end for having made that decision. And anyways, yes, I hope that my service does that, but I also have a lot of respect for him in that way, because I have that belief and I think that he does that. And I'm sure you have that as well, right? Like, you hire me to make your place look a certain way, and then it photographs a certain way, or you feel a certain way when you're in it. And it's completely makes sense that you wouldn't understand these design tips, because that hasn't been your entire career, whereas it has been mine.
Yeah, you're 100%, Erin. We try to pour ourselves into every single project, and the 15 years that we have behind us and our entire design and install team, learning, making mistakes, defining and creating systems and structures that we repeat then on every single unit. We know how it photographs. We know how it maximizes nightly rental rates. We know how to create the most impactful photos that get that all important, right swipe, and someone pins your listing to the top of 110 listings in Harbor 171. So yeah, it's our passion and our joy to share that with home buyers and make sure that we impart all the knowledge. You get the entire package from us. Every little tip that we can offer, every insight we share through the design journey, and then the install, and even the handover to the property manager. the care and maintenance package and the warranty, extended warranty, or the service manuals on the appliances that are installed. Like all of that is like lovingly downloaded to owners when they arrive because we want them to succeed. And I'm sure that that's your passion as well.
100%. I want people to not get in a position where it's not working for them. It's like your first one should be a good experience so that you want to do the next one, or
Yeah.
even if you decide not to do the next one, you weren't devastated by the first one. It just isn't your thing. And I think for you too, like, because I knew about you before I ever met you, and it's like, especially in Puerto Vallarta, it's a word of mouth
Yeah,
business, and
amazing.
it matters. And I think when people move here too, like, they're nervous. They're moving to a different country, or they're buying a property in a different country. They're very vulnerable. And so to have someone that they can trust and that is going to speak to them in a way that makes sense without making them feel silly is a very powerful thing. And then on top of that, more than that, having the project executed the way it needs to be executed so
Yeah.
that you can come in and feel good about your new life in Mexico or your new vacation home. I think that should always be the goal for professionals, is like, how can we set them up so that they feel good about this, and honestly good about it, not just good to be good, but like honestly good.
I am so excited to have had the opportunity to share Erin's insights with you today. Just one way we are telling the stories of art, design, and architecture and keeping Vallarta real.